Mr. Cain, about Afghanistan, you recently said this, quote, if the experts, the generals, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, if they believe we can win, I'm not going to tear up the plan they give me. I'm going to execute the plan. If we can't win, I want to know what we can do to exit with dignity out of that country. You're running for president after almost 10 years in Afghanistan. You don't have your own plan yet about what you would do in Afghanistan?
No, because it's not clear what the mission is. That's the bigger problem. It's not clear what the mission is. It's not real clear to the American people what our interests are. And then thirdly, it's not clear what the roadmap to victory is. And what does that mean? This is why I would revisit the issue in defining those three critical questions, answering those questions before I, as president, made a decision. Because before I make a decision to send men and women in uniform into battle, I want to make sure we know what the objective is clearly, that we clearly know how it serves our interests either at home or abroad, and thirdly, what is our roadmap to victory.
But, sir, how would you define winning in Afghanistan right now as you're looking at it as a candidate?
My point is the experts and their advice and their input would be the basis for me making that decision. I'm not privy to a lot of confidential information since I'm not in government and I'm not in administration. One of the things that I've always prided myself on is making an informed decision based upon knowing all of the facts. And at this point, I don't know all of the facts, but that's the process that I would use. Make sure that we're working on the right problem. Make sure that we set the right priorities relative to Afghanistan and every other country. Thirdly, make sure we get the advice from the right people, and then put those plans into place.
Okay. Well, that was quick. You stopped quick. You got the bell back.
Good breaks. May I say what prompted me to raise my hand on this issue very briefly? I heard Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say it very clearly a few months after 9/11, 2001, after the tragedy. The terrorists have one objective: to kill all of us. And so, yes, I believe that we should do whatever means possible in order to protect the people of this nation. That's their ultimate goal.
Mr. Cain, the national average price for a gallon of gasoline is now close to $4. And it's approaching $5 in some states. This affects prices, obviously, way beyond the pump. The cost of transportation drives up the cost of doing business and leads to higher food prices. So, Mr. Cain, what will President Cain do to alleviate skyrocketing gas prices?
Contrary to what President Obama said when he stated there wasn't anything that he could do in the short term, that simply is not true. The one thing that the president can do is to establish a real energy independence plan. We have all of the resources we need right here in this country to establish energy independence if we had the leadership. Now, the dynamics that impact the price of oil and ultimately the price of gasoline, getting it out of the ground, refinery and distribution, and speculators. If the world market believed that we were serious about energy independence and we were going to utilize all of our existing resources, the speculators would stop speculating up and they speculate down until we get our own oil out of the ground.
Mr. Cain, we asked our viewers to send in questions, and a number of them wanted us to ask about this subject. You say abolish the IRS and impose a fair tax, which is essentially a national sales tax of 23%. But the experts say to generate enough revenue, Americans would have to start paying taxes on new home sales, they'd have to start paying taxes on rentals, they'd have to start paying taxes on health care, and according to the experts, the practical effect of a fair tax would be a tax cut for the wealthy and a tax increase for the middle class.
Well, Chris, with all due respect, your experts are dead wrong, because I have studied the fair tax for a long time. First of all, the law has already been written. It is 23%. Let's not leave out the most important part. It replaces all federal income tax that's being taken out of people's checks. It replaces the payroll tax that's being taken out of people's checks. That's the part that people often forget to miss. Now, depending upon how you define a windfall for the rich, it's also a bonanza for the not so rich because of the prebate. Every family deserves to get a prebate to offset taxes that would be paid on essential goods and services. That levels the playing field, in my opinion, and especially gives the not-so-rich an advantage that they don't have today under our current system. So yes, I strongly support totally replacing the current code with the fair tax.
Mr. Cain, you have said that sometimes states should be empowered to enforce laws the federal government will not. When it comes to Arizona's controversial SB 1070 immigration bill, Congressman Paul has said laws like that can be harmful, even dangerous to innocent Americans. Did Arizona go too far?
I don't believe Arizona went too far. Let's first make sure that we're talking about solving the right problem. The immigration issue in America is not one problem. It's 4 problems. It's securing the border, enforcing the laws that are there, promoting the path to citizenship that we already have. We don't need a new path. We've got to clean up the bureaucracy in the process. And then number 4, this is where I believe you empower the states to do what the federal government cannot and is not doing. So no, Arizona did not go too far. They were simply trying to protect themselves. I believe in empowering the states to do what this federal government cannot micromanage out of Washington, D.C.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to change the topic back to foreign policy. I'll share this round with Juan next to me. First, Mr. Cain. President Obama justified his intervention into Libya, saying as president he, quote, refused to wait for the images of slaughter and mass graves before taking action. Yet in Syria, the administration has not acted, despite hundreds of protesters reportedly being killed at the hands of President Assad. Which action, in your mind, is the right one?
Neither, for the following reason. We should start with, what's the objective? That's number 1. Secondly, how does it relate to the interests of the United States of America? Thirdly, is there a plan for victory? How do you define that? In both of those instances, those things are not clear. We need a real clear national security strategy with every nation on the planet, friend or foe. We obviously didn't have that, because you can see between those 2 examples inconsistencies in the president's decisions and in his actions. And even in Libya, when the civil strife first started out, he was supporting the exposed leader. Then he changed. So that meant that we didn't have a very clear strategy or a very clear definition of what we were going to do if the situation escalated, which is exactly what it has done.
Mr. Cain, we'll stay on the topic of DOMA. You have said the administration's decision not to defend it is, quote, a breach of presidential duty bordering on treason. That's some pretty tough language. Isn't this country just moving toward accepting gay marriage?
The Defense of Marriage Act is one of the laws of the land, signed in 1996 by President Bill Clinton. But for the president to give direction to the Justice Department, when in his oath of office, he says he is supposed to protect and uphold the laws of the United States of America, to me, that is asking the Justice Department to not uphold a law.
Thank you, sir.
So, Herman Cain, here in South Carolina, as you heard before, the GOP is up in arms over a decision by the General Counsel of the National Labor Relations Board challenging the Boeing company for moving jobs to a right-to-work state. In Wisconsin, Governor Walker has ended collective bargaining rights for some civil service workers. Mr. Cain, does the GOP risk the perception that it's becoming the union-busting party?
I don't think so. Because what the National Labor Relations Board did by citing Boeing about coming to South Carolina is simply outrageous. We have a free market system, and for the government to start picking winners and losers and then trying to decide where those winners should put their business, it's outrageous, and it would upset the balance of how our free market system is supposed to work. One of the biggest problems we have with this country right now today is too much government intervention in trying to tell businesses how to do what they do best, which is create jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. Businesses create jobs. We need to get government out of the way, including trying to tell a company where they should build a new plant.
You've never held office, but you did run for office once. Back in 2004, you lost the Republican Senate primary in Georgia. You got just 26% of the vote. In that campaign, you said your opponent was pro-choice because he would have allowed abortions, pro-choice because he would have allowed abortions in the case of rape and incest. You have an impressive personal history, sir, but why do you have any belief that you stand a chance to win this nomination, let alone the presidency?
A couple of reasons. First of all, the people of the United States are going to elect the person that I believe projects the greatest amount of leadership strength, not the person that has the greatest amount of money, not the person that necessarily has held public office before. And I'm proud of the fact, quite frankly, that I haven't held public office before. Because I ask people, most of the people that are in elective office in Washington, D.C., they have held public office before. How's that working for you? We have a mess. How about sending a problem solver to the White House? How about someone who has a career of defining the right problem, assigning the right priority, surrounding yourself with the right people? If you look at this current administration, it is the worst in current history. And fourth, putting together the plans and then being able to engage the American public in these common sense solutions.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Cain, you supported Governor Romney in 2008. What did you see in him back then that led you to support his campaign?
Back then, I saw his business experience, which I concluded that meant that he understood how to create jobs. And like then and now, the creation of jobs is one of the most critical issues that we have in this country. That's why I supported him. I'm running now rather than supporting Mr. Romney because he did not win. So I'm going to try my time.
Thank you, Mr. Cain. Chris. Mr. Cain, your closing remarks, sir.
Fellow patriots in this exceptional nation, the United States of America, we need real economic growth, a real energy independence plan, real national security clarity, and we're only going to get it with real leadership, not more positionship. God bless you, and yes, God is blessing America.